this video, I'm dropping an underwater camera while fishing 200 feet deep on a reef, then 500 feet deep over a sunken battleship, and finally 1200 feet deep in hopes of finding a sea monster. So without further ado, let's get right into this video. We started our morning with a quick run out to the reef in 200 feet of water. And for this first drop, we cut up some squid into small pieces and rigged them onto our deep drop setup. Once the camera was turned on, we positioned the boat right over the spot and dropped down our rig. Now it's time to begin the challenge. So let's switch over to the underwater camera point of view. And at this depth, you usually hit bottom in under a minute, which means the action happens fast. Later in this video, we're dropping the camera 1200 feet deep, and what we saw down there was unbelievable. So make sure you stick around. We're now about 20 seconds off the bottom, and you can see how crystal clear it is down here. And the best part about fishing these shallow reefs is the amount of life you'll spot. As soon as we hit bottom, a few vermilion snappers swam right by the camera, and they're loaded on this reef. So we slowly drifted this reef, and if you look closely, you'll even see lionfish and some small grouper. But after drifting for a while, these fish just kept picking off my squid. And that's why it's so important to have multiple hooks when you're fishing this deep. It saves you from reeling up every time a fish robs your squid. And if you follow our Instagram, you'll know this is actually the same reef where we lost our other underwater camera. Luckily, this time, everything went perfect. So we drifted right off the reef, and that's when we finally hooked up. Now we are out in the sand, and these snappers were still chasing down the rig. And honestly, we should have doubled up on a few of them, but on this day, we were fishing with a much bigger rig than we should have. Finally, after a long wait, we hooked into our first vermilion snapper. And right after this drop, we're dropping this camera 500 feet deep on a sunken battleship in search of a giant fish. I now started bringing up this vermilion snapper, and a couple minutes later, we finally had this fish right under the boat. We flipped this fish in the boat, marking a successful first drop. But now it's time to see if we can make it happen 500 feet deep. We just made it to our spot in 500 feet of water, and it was pouring rain. But no matter the conditions, we were committed to completing this challenge. So I rigged up some squid, and we dropped this rig in the water and made our way down 500 feet deep. We now switched to the underwater camera point of view, and this drop gave us something we have never seen before. We were able to see our first shark on camera. So stay tuned. We're now just a few seconds off the bottom, and as you guys can see, it's pitch black down here. And that's why it's so important to have a light on your deep drop rig. We finally hit bottom, and if you look closely, there are fish all over the bottom. So we patiently sat on the bottom, and this type of fishing is really all about patience. Sometimes it only takes a few minutes, and other times it can take much longer before a fish finds your bait. And right after this drop, we're making a 10-mile run offshore to our spot in 1200 feet of water. So definitely stay tuned for that. While we waited for a bite, you can see just how much life was holding on this wreck. There were fish everywhere, and a lot of them were really nice sized fish. And if you're looking for spots like this yourself, these are all public wrecks you can find online. If you ever need help with this kind of fishing, just let us know in the comments. So out of nowhere, a snowy grouper smashes into the camera. And these grouper are easily some of the best tasting fish out there. That same fish circled back and hit the camera again. So I brought the rig up thinking I was hooked into a fish, but there was nothing on it. So I dropped the rig right back down to the bottom, and that's when we landed right in the middle of a frenzy of fish. Just a few seconds after hitting bottom, a bunch of fish ran straight at my deep drop rig. This was easily the most fish I've ever seen on the underwater camera at one time. Finally, we hooked into one, and it turned out to be a grouper. But as we were bringing this fish up, we saw a giant hammerhead shark. And this was the first time anything like this has ever happened to us. So if you look below this snowy grouper, just look at the size of that shark. And honestly, we didn't get a great shot on this shark, but it was definitely so cool to see this. And it's crazy that that shark was hanging out right below our boat. So we now had this snowy grouper right by the boat, and we were successfully able to land it. So that makes drop number 2 also successful. Now there's one last thing we need to do, and that's to run out to 1,200 feet of water and catch a fish that deep. We've just made it out to 1,200 feet of water, about 10 miles offshore. And this is the deepest we have ever dropped our underwater camera. So we want to make sure everything is perfect. I started off by rigging up full squids on our deep drop setup. Then I turned on the underwater camera. And once that was all set up, it was time to make our way down 1,200 feet deep. So I switched over to the underwater camera point of view. And this process alone takes a while. It usually takes 3 to 5 minutes just to hit bottom. And when you're bringing a fish up from this depth, it can take 10 to 15 minutes depending on the size of the catch. So we are now seconds off the bottom, and as you guys can see, it is pitch black down here. So all we're gonna be looking for are 2 green eyes, and that usually is a fish. So if you look below our bottom squid, you can actually see one fish. It looks like he's connected to our bottom squid. He definitely wasn't fighting, but then this one fish came out of nowhere and just crushed that middle squid. So the second I felt this fish, I instantly started bringing him up. And out here, when you're fishing from 800 feet all the way out to 1,200 feet of water, there are black belly rosefish everywhere the second you hit bottom. So I slowly started bringing these fish up, and you guys can see their eyes just lighting up on our rig. And let me know in the comments below where you guys would want to see us drop the underwater camera next. So about halfway up, we were able to have a good view on both of our fish. But then, this is where the craziest thing happened. So right under the boat, we ended up losing one of our rosefish. But a giant sailfish came out of nowhere and chased down our deep drop rig. Honestly, it would have been pretty cool if he attacked the Rosie, but sadly he didn't. So you guys can see this sailfish just swim right up to the camera and do a little drive-by. And honestly, this was some of the coolest footage we have ever got with this underwater camera. So it definitely made dropping 1,200 feet deep worth it. So my dad came over to help me land this rosefish, and we were successfully able to complete this challenge, catching a fish in 200 feet of water, 500 feet of water, and 1,200 feet of water. We hope you guys enjoyed this fishing video, and we'll see you in the next Barjack's Family fishing video.